Hello all, Dave here. Today we're going to look at a new, very interesting and I think slept on trail shoe, which is the Brooks Catamount 3. I've ran about 80 kilometers in these shoes now on a variety of different surfaces, from pavement, mud to more rocky terrain. So I feel like I've got quite a good feel now for how this shoe performs on different surfaces, and I'm ready to chat to you all and do my full review for the Brooks Catamount 3s. Before I go deeper into the different elements that make up this shoe and share my likes and dislikes, let's quickly go over the stats and features and what's changed from version 2. The Brooks Catamount 3 is designed to be Brooks's trail speed and race shoe for a range of different distances, from marathons to 100k races. Although a lot of people take them even further, these have been on the feet of Brooks athletes doing longer races such as Western States 100 and UTMB. Price-wise, it retails here in the UK for £160, so a little bit steep, but cheaper than a lot of other plated trail shoes from other brands on the market. Now, something that's important for all race and speed shoes is weight, and I'm glad to say the Catamount 3 has lost some weight from version 2, about 10 grams to be exact. Now, this is mainly due to Brooks moving to a new single layer mesh for the upper, which is thinner and a lighter solution than before. Also, Brooks has ditched the Velcro gaiter attachment point at the rear, and for reference, in my size UK 10.5, it's weighing in at 295 grams, and that's with a little bit of mud on it as well. Other than the new upper, the other key update is Brooks have moved to a new Trail Track green outsole. Now, this is more of an environmental change, as the key update is the new outsole is now made with 25% recycled materials. Although Brooks do claim there's improved grip on a variety of surfaces, and the outsole lug depth stays the same at 3.5mm. Aside from the upper and outsole, not much has really changed from the Brooks Catamount 2. The midsole is the same nitrogen-infused DNA flash midsole, which is paired with the TPU Skyvolt propulsion plate sandwiched in the middle. This gives a total stack height of 30mm at the heel and 24mm at the forefoot, and that gives a total of a 6mm drop. So if you're someone that has ran in version 2 and enjoyed it, you're going to get a familiar feel here. The TPU Skyvolt plate also doubles as a rock plate here, giving the underside of your foot protection from any sharp rocks or nasty terrain. Now that we've gone over the stats and features, I'll walk you through what I liked and what I didn't like so much about the Brooks Catamount 3s. The first thing that impressed me is the upper. Although previous Brooks shoes I've tried maybe haven't been the most exciting, one thing that's always remained consistent is the comfortable uppers, and this is no different on the Catamount 3. As I mentioned before, they've moved onto a new single layer lightweight mesh. This seems to be very comfortable, and it allows you to have quite a good lockdown and hugs your foot in all the right places. But there's also a decent amount of space in the toe box here. I mean, it's not ultra or topo wide, but it's wide enough that I haven't had any blisters on any of my runs so far, with my longest run being 32 kilometers. Quite often in lighter weight shoes meant for speed work, the upper comfort is sacrificed for performance and weight loss. But here on the Catamount, although not plush, there is padding around the heel with a stiff heel counter for added stability as well. The whole material they've used in the upper is also relatively soft to touch, so I'm confident most people would find this shoe comfortable, and it can suit a range of different foot shapes. Another thing I liked about the upper that may be a little bit overlooked, as it's not really a main feature, but when I tested these in the Peak District, the whole place was drenched. Some of the trails had basically turned into streams, and the upper did allow water in. It's definitely not waterproof, but once I got out of those wet sections of trail, within a few hundred meters, all the water had drained out, which is crucial for a trail shoe for keeping your feet dry, warm, and blister-free. My second like here is the midsole. I haven't tried a Brooks shoe with a nitrogen-infused DNA flash foam before, so I didn't really know what to expect. Previous shoes I've tried from Brooks have done the job, but they felt relatively outdated in the midsole department. From what I can tell for the Catamount, they've taken the success of the DNA flash foam in their Hyperion lineup and applied it to a trail application. and I'm glad to say it really shines on the trails. In combination with that Skyvolt plate that Brooks has sandwiched in the middle of the foam, you can definitely feel the shoe is giving you a lot back in each stride. There's also a little bit of a rocker in this midsole, so on flat level trails it's pretty easy to gain some effortless speed, and the responsive foam, TPU plate and the rocker keeps you turnover pretty fast. This combination means you can settle into a rhythm and cover ground pretty rapidly without expending too much effort. Now, the plate isn't as rigid as a carbon plate you'd find in a road shoe, but it's definitely noticeable. It's just a bit more subtle. It certainly helps a bit on the uphills as well, where you can feel the shoe really digging in and propelling you upwards. I've also found the midsole to be quite stable as well, and that's partly due to the foam being a little bit firm, but also in the heel here, Brooks have extended that DNA flash foam to create a sort of cradle around your foot. This prevents too much side-to-side movement, and I think it really aids my confidence when I'm moving fast along the trails. Moving on to the next thing I really like, and that's the lightness of this shoe. It's sub 300 grams in my size 10.5 UK, and it might not be as light as a road racing shoe for example, but it's definitely a lot lighter than other trail shoes I've had in my rotation before. I seem to find that with trail shoes it's normally the case that well cushioned ones are bulky, heavy and a little bit clunky, while the lighter ones are quite nimble and flexible but with almost no cushioning. And the Catamount 3 seems to strike a good middle ground between cushioning and weight. It's not super plush, and it's not the lightest trail shoe out there ever, but it's a really nice balance of both, and I think it suits most situations quite well. It's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of trail shoes in that respect. The lack of weight just helps delay fatigue in the legs over those really long distances and adds to the nimble feeling of the shoe. The last major plus I'd like to talk about is the grip. I wasn't sure that the Trail Track green grip would be anything special at first. I mean, it worked fine on hard trails, but then again, most shoes would. It wasn't until the weather here in the UK took a really bad turn for the worse that I got to test it to its full potential. I went over wet rocks, streams, snow, mud, sandy surfaces, and somehow the shoe didn't come too unsettled, which is really impressive considering the lug depth on the Catamount 3 is only 3.5mm. The only surface where the Trail Track green outsole didn't perform so well was boggy mud or wet mud on rocky surfaces. Then again, I think most shoes would come unstuck here unless you have a specialised mud shoe. I also tried a couple of runs on the road to test out the road to trail qualities, and again here it was absolutely fine. Obviously no grip issues here, the lugs were shallow enough that it didn't really affect the on-road experience in terms of ride. If you have some runs with maybe a bit of road and a trail section, these would be really good for both. Overall, I think the outsole is really good for what it is. It really adds to the do-it-all mentality of this shoe. I'd recommend to use it on hard-packed surfaces or rocky trails, but maybe avoid deep mud unless you really have no other options. Now that I've been through my positive points on the Brooks Catamount 3s, I'd like to just talk about some things I think Brooks could improve on to make this shoe even better. Firstly, I think the Catamount 3s have a lot of overlays in the upper. They've got an overlay going all the way around the front here, down the side of the foot, some on the side for the logo and in the heel as well. The overlay in the toe box does give some nice protection if you were to kick any rocks or any other debris on the trail, but I think it might be a little bit overdone here. It covers all the toes and extends down the side of the foot, so if you've got particularly wide feet, this might cause some trouble over longer distances. If your feet expand, you might feel a little bit of rubbing. Although I haven't experienced this myself yet, I'll need to do some longer runs into the ultra distances to test this. It would have been better, I think, if the overlay was just kept to a minimum and the rest of the upper used the same flexible mesh, which would create a little bit more give in the toe box. Another aspect of the shoe which I think could be improved is the cushioning. The cushioning on flat trails is okay, but as soon as I find myself going downhill at any sort of speed, I can really feel the impact. This isn't an issue in shorter runs, but I'm not sure if I can wear this for a 100-mile race, for example. I might find myself reaching for a shoe with a little bit more stack height and a bit more protection, or switching halfway to something more cushioned. It'd be nice to see Brooks save weight in other areas of the shoe and maybe add another 2 to 5 millimeters of stack. It would really make this the perfect trail shoe for me, as I don't think it would impact the stability that much. Overall though, it's not a deal breaker for me. I think there's enough cushion there for most situations for most people. It would just be nice to have a little bit more in future versions of the Catamount. Lastly, for downsides, I was a little bit sad to see the gaiter attachment removed on the Brooks Catamount too. I know they probably did this to save a little bit of weight, and probably not a lot of people use the gaiter attachments. But on my longest run, especially going through deep mud and water, I noticed some debris entering the shoe, which was really annoying to try and get out. Now, I could have prevented this if I used a gaiter, which would have just shielded the top of the shoe. But again, this is just a minor complaint. Most people probably wouldn't make use of this attachment. But in longer races, the last thing you really want to do is sit there and pick out stones and bits of mud out the shoe. So I'm hoping that they'll bring back the gaiter attachments in version 4. So to sum up my thoughts, I actually like the Brooks Catamount 3s a whole lot more than I expected to. Although it's not plush, the midsole gives really good energy return, and combined with that Skyvolt plate, it gives many miles of effortless running at a decent pace. I think they're best used for smooth rolling trails, but they can also handle more technical terrain with the odd bit of pavement if you need to. If you're looking for a do-it-all trail shoe that's quite nimble and fast, you can't really go wrong here with the Catamount 3s. Anyway, that's it for the review today. If you think I've missed anything or just have a general question, as always, please ask away. The next shoe I'm probably going to look at is the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel V4, so if you're interested in that, please subscribe. But if you have any shoes you'd like me to look at on this channel, please leave a comment. I'll see if I can make it happen. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the review and see you in the next one.